Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Metzger, and we're going to talk about our lab, number 7, which is overloaded operators. And we're going to get some practice defining and using them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write a class with a data member inside of it. I think I'll do a customer class today, maybe with a bank balance. And we're going to initialize those members with something reasonable, so we don't normally start off with something 0 or blank. And we're going to override the stream insertion operator so that we can use cout with our command, or we could use it to print information to a file. We're also going to override the equals operator so we can copy another member. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over to my source code editor, and we're going to create a couple of different files. We're going to create a customer.hpp file, and a customer.c++ file, so we can put our implementation, and our main.cpp file, where we will test our class out. All right, so put some information at the top. So author, put my name, CS202. Okay, and I know that we need to use IOStream and IOmanip. All right. So one of the things that we can do. All right, we'll just start by writing this shell out. Okay, so there's our main file. So it's always good to start off with a little bit of a design. So we're just going to make a few items for us to kind of work on. So create customer class. We're going to need to write setters and getters. We're going to need to override the stream insertion operator, and we're going to need to override the assignment operator. Okay, so we're going to work on those. So let's go ahead and work on creating the customer class. So first we are going to put our include guards. So customer HPP. And here is our class, customer. So we'll put a public member, put our constructor in there, and add a private section. And we're going to want to create some standard strings. Put the first name, the last name, and put their bank balance. And I like to put underscores at the end. It just tells me it's a private member. And we need to include the string library in order for this to work. We're also going to need to include the IOStream library as well when we create the stream insertion operator. Okay, so there's that, and then we'll just go ahead and include our header file so we can implement the constructor. So it's always good to create some defaults. So one way that we could do that is use our colon operator. So we could say first name is supposed to be, we could pick somebody famous like Grace Hopper. She's famous in computer science for talking about bugs in software. The famous moth is attributed to the work that she was doing. All right, and bank balance we'll put as 100. Okay, now one thing we can do is we're initializing this here in this constructor, but we could also initialize these with the data, which is also a really good way to do it. So I'm actually going to do it that way. All right, so Grace Hopper, balance $100 or whatever it might be. Okay, so there's a customer. So then we can remove this code over here. We don't need it, but we'll keep the constructor in there just for example's sake. Okay, so we've created the customer class. So what I like to do is use my we can create this design, and then we can do our git commit messages based on that. So if I switch over to my terminal here, then I can, there's my files. So I need to add my C++ file, my header file, and my main.cpp. And so we'll commit those, and this is create customer class. And this is, I'll mark this as for lab 7 so I know what this was all about. Okay, so did our git commit message. Always good to do a little bit of work, do your git commit messages, that way you can have that history of the work that you're doing. So let's go back to our Sublime view, and sometimes it's nice to be able to write the code that you'd like to see before you start writing it. So in our case, the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and write our const customer, and we'd like to work on the print capability. So let's go ahead and see out this customer, and there's our new line. Okay, so if we were to compile this, this would of course this would fail. So if we were to do the command line here, and I use the C++ compiler, and we want to compile main.cpp, customer.cpp, we're going to get some errors here. It doesn't have something defined. So customer wasn't defined in the scope. Oh, it's because we haven't included it yet. So let's go back here, fix that. Okay, so we need to include our customer.header file. All right. So when I go back to compiling this, yep, you get lots of errors. This is what happens when you forget to write something. Oftentimes, when you get lots of errors like this, it means you probably did something very small, and got you in trouble. In our case, we know we have not written this operator yet. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So go to our C++ file. I'm going to write this operator outside the class. Okay, so this OStream operator, we need to return a reference back to it, because the left-hand side we will need to take a reference in. All right, so there's our, call that output stream, and we're going to take a const customer reference. Okay, so there's our prototype here, and let's go ahead and save that. Now, if you notice, all these are private members, so we're going to need to write some kind of setters and getters, but before we do that, we'll just go ahead and start by writing our customer class here, our stream output. And then we're going to want to return the output stream. So when we're done with it, we need to return the output stream, but our goal here is to get this compiling. So we'll go back down to the terminal, and let's see what happens if I compile this now. Oh, a few more errors. Let's see what happened here. Okay, normally this means you forgot to include something. Which we have string, ostream, it's a very silly mistake right there. Semicolon. So this is what happens. You got to hunt these bugs down. It's just a little simple syntax error. So we go back to the terminal and I just ran the compile command and it compiled. All right. So if we were to run our program, it does nothing, of course, because we had nothing to print out. So let's go ahead and code those those getters real quick. So we need to return a reference to a. Let me just go ahead and hide that real quick because I don't need to see it anymore. Let's get our first name, and we want to put const here because we're not trying to modify the class. It needs to work with a read-only class. So return the first name. Oops. Last name. And we're going to go ahead and return the bank balance. Okay. So we go over here and we can refer to this in this class. So we can print out the first name, and we can print out the last name, and we can print out the bank balance. Now, when you're dealing with items like currency, there's a useful function called put money, which we get with the iomanip header. So if we were to get our bank balance here, and we call put money, then if we set up the locale for the user, we can. First, I need to include iomanip for this to work. It'll just default to printing out the number, but sometimes it's nice to be able to say this is yen, or this is euros, or this is dollars. So in our main file, we're going to need to add a reference, or we need to tell cout that we need to use the current locale, which we're going to use English US UTF-8, and then we're going to go ahead and say show the base, which is going to show the $sign. All right, so let's see what happens when we switch over to the terminal and compile this. All right, so when we run this, we can see Grace Hopper and bank balance is $1. I wonder where we get. Maybe we put $1 in when we looked at the source code. Let's hear. Yep, there's 100. Customer to bank balance. It's because it's coins, right? So 100 pennies, so that's $1. That's fine. We'll do $1. Okay, so now we need to write some setters as well. That's on our list of things to do. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll have a void set first name We'll take a const string new first name. And you notice that there's no const at the end of this because this is going to modify our class. So put our last name, and let's go and update our bank balance. Okay, so these functions I am definitely going to want to put inside the C++ file because they may involve more than just, oops, wrong, copy, paste, because we might need to do some additional checking on what they do. So not uncommon to put setters inside your C++ file and put your getters in the header file where they can be nice and fast. We want getters to be fast. Okay, so there's our first one. So we'll go ahead and first name equals new first name. Last name equals new last name. Bank balance equals new bank balance. Okay. So there's our setters, and we can go and test that out too. So let's create a second customer. And customer 2, we're going to set this, use Albert Einstein. And customer 2, the bank balance, we're going to set 200. So let's go ahead and use our cout to print out customer 2 with a new line at the end of it. Okay, let's see if everything compiles. And if this compiles, then we're going to go ahead and do our next git commit message. Run the test. There we go. So there's Grace Hopper, $1, Albert Einstein, $2. All right, so we're going to go ahead and git commit. If we use the -a and the -m, it'll add all the files in the current directory. So this was our write setters and getters. Okay, so we've done that work. So let's go back to Sublime. Just check that off right there. So now we've actually overridden that operator. Okay, so we'll just check that off too. So now the last thing we need to do is override the equals operator. So the idea here is that we might have a third customer, but this customer we might want to assign, say, customer 2. So copy Albert Einstein's information so that when we see out customer 3, we will get our Albert Einstein. We'll try it out with Grace Hopper as well. But we know that Grace Hopper is the default, so let's go to the header file, and now we need to write the equals. So with the equals operator, we want to return a reference to ourselves, and we'll use the this pointer for that. So there's our function name, operator equals, and we'll take a const customer, which I'll call other. All right, so that's our prototype. So now we're going to go ahead and write that out. So now, because I said we need to return a reference to ourselves, what we're going to do is return, remember that this is a pointer to the instance, and star this is going to dereference the pointer, and that dereferencing is going to give us a reference to the class. And that's going to be useful because if you wanted to adjust one of the properties or something, you can chain this continually, otherwise you don't get that behavior. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and copy our elements over. Okay, so there's our equals operator, and now when we should be able to check that off once we've tested it. So switch to the terminal view again, compile, run, and there we go. The copy operation works just fine. And so we can go back to our code editor, check off that work. It's all done. Go back to the terminal, check our code. So this was override the equals operator. So put lab07. Okay. And so going back to our slide here, we can see we wrote a class, some data members inside of it, initialized the data members with something reasonable. We overrode the stream insertion operator, and we overrode the assignment operator, so we can copy another instance of the class. All right, so now you try it. Pick a class. It doesn't have to be customer. Try something new, something you're interested in, and let's see what you do. All right, well, thank you. Have a good day. Adios.